In 1988, Michael Jackson was mid-performance at Wembley Stadium when he suddenly stopped singing, walked off the stage, and did something that left 72,000 fans in complete silence. What happened next wasn't captured by the official cameras, but every person in that stadium knew they had witnessed something that would haunt them forever. But what could possibly make the king of pop abandon his legendary perfectionism and break every rule of showmanship in front of the world's biggest audience? The roar hits you like a physical force. 72,000 voices unified in worship, their energy crackling through the humid London air like electricity before a storm. Wembley Stadium pulses with life, a concrete cathedral bathed in strobing white light that cuts through the cigarette haze and summer heat. The year is 1988, and the Bad World Tour has transformed into something beyond entertainment. It's become a pilgrimage. Michael Jackson stands center stage, his silhouette sharp against the massive video screens that magnify every gesture to godlike proportions. The sequined glove catches the light as he spins, each movement precise and otherworldly. His fedora tilts at the perfect angle, casting shadows across features that have become the most recognizable face on earth. The opening chords of "The Way You Make Me Feel" thunder through the massive sound system, and the crowd responds like a congregation receiving communion. The stage itself is a marvel of 1980s technology, risers that hydraulically lift and lower, pyrotechnics that shoot flames 30 feet into the air, lighting rigs that cost more than most people's houses. Every element has been calibrated for maximum impact, designed to make one man appear larger than life to an audience that stretches beyond the horizon. The backup dancers move with military precision, their silver costumes reflecting the strobing lights as they create geometric patterns around Michael's fluid movements. But tonight feels different. There's an undercurrent in the air, a tension that even the theatrical glow can't illuminate. In the VIP section, industry executives check their watches and whisper about box office numbers, their champagne glasses catching the reflected glow from the stage. Record label representatives take notes on crowd reactions, calculating the commercial value of each scream. The machinery of fame grinds relentlessly around the performance, reducing art to arithmetic. Security guards scan the crowd with practiced eyes, noting the usual chaos of reaching hands and tear-streaked faces. They've seen it all before the fainting fans, the marriage proposals shouted into the void, the desperate attempts to touch something divine. The front rows surge forward against the barriers, a sea of desperate devotion pressing against the stage like waves against a seawall. Among them sits a figure that doesn't belong in this frenzy of movement. A young man, perhaps 25, confined to a wheelchair that seems impossibly small against the massive stage before him. His caregiver, a woman with kind eyes and weathered hands, grips a handmade sign against her chest. The cardboard is bent from the journey, the magic marker words slightly smudged but still legible in the flashing lights. The young man's eyes never leave Michael's face. While others scream and reach desperately toward the stage, he sits still, his thin hands folded in his lap. There was a quality in his stillness that cuts through the chaos, a quiet dignity that speaks of someone who has made peace with something the rest of the world hasn't yet understood. His breathing is labored but steady, each inhale a conscious effort that he makes look effortless. Michael hits his signature lean during the song's climax, defying gravity as he always does, and the stadium explodes in approval. But for just a moment, as he straightens and scans the crowd with those famous eyes, his gaze lingers on the wheelchair section. Recognition flickers across his face, something deeper perhaps, or intuition. The moment passes so quickly that the cameras miss it, but the seeds of something extraordinary have been planted in the electric air of Wembley Stadium. But beneath the spectacle, a different story unfolds. Behind the dazzling facade, Michael Jackson is drowning in plain sight. The makeup artists have worked their magic, covering the vitiligo patches that map across his skin like continents of shame. Each night, they paint him back into the image the world expects. But beneath the layers of foundation and stage lights, he feels himself disappearing, piece by piece. The Bad album was supposed to prove he could surpass Thriller's impossible success, but instead, it's become a gilded cage of expectation. His feet ache in the custom-made shoes, each step on stage a small act of defiance against the chronic pain that shoots up his spine. The dance moves that once flowed like water now require conscious effort, muscle memory fighting against a body pushed beyond its limits. Tour doctors wait in the wings with their cocktail of painkillers and stimulants, the only thing keeping him vertical through shows that feel more like endurance tests than artistic expression. But he never lets it show. The king of pop cannot stumble, cannot falter, cannot be human. The isolation is the cruelest part. Surrounded by thousands who love him, yet unable to touch or be touched without calculation. Every interaction is filtered through handlers, bodyguards, and the constant awareness that his every breath is being watched, analyzed, commodified. He retreats deeper into the persona each night, finding safety in the character of Michael Jackson while the man inside grows smaller and more desperate for genuine connection. Tonight, something in the crowd's energy penetrates the usual wall of adoration. Maybe it's the way the front row seems more subdued than usual, or how certain faces in the audience look at him not with the typical hunger for entertainment, but with something raw, more urgent. He can feel it between songs, during the brief moments when the music stops and the only sound is breathing his and theirs synchronized in the darkness. His personal life weighs heavy on his shoulders as he moves through the choreographed sequences, the constant accusations, the media's obsession with his changing appearance, the way childhood friends now look at him like he's become something alien. He built Neverland as a sanctuary, but even there, the walls feel like they're closing in. The only place he feels truly alive is on stage, in these moments when the music washes away everything else and leaves only the pure connection between performer and audience. But tonight, that connection feels charged with something he can't name. As he transitions into "The Way You Make Me Feel," his trained performer's eye catches movement in the front section. Security is handling something with unusual gentleness, their typical efficiency replaced by careful consideration. A wheelchair, a sign, a woman's protective stance over someone who clearly needs protecting. The sight triggers something primal in him, a recognition that cuts through the manufactured perfection of the show. This isn't about entertainment anymore. Someone in that crowd isn't here for the spectacle or the celebrity worship. They're here for something Michael has almost forgotten how to give, something real. Something that exists beyond the sequin glove and the moonwalk, beyond the carefully constructed mythology of the king of pop. His voice wavers slightly on the next line, a crack so subtle that only he notices it. But it's enough to remind him that underneath everything, the fame, the pain, the isolation, he's still capable of being moved by another human being's need. The bass line of "The Way You Make Me Feel" thrums through the stadium as Michael glides across the stage, but his peripheral vision keeps catching the unusual stillness in the front section. Security guards cluster around something, their usual crowd control aggression replaced by an almost reverent caution. He spins through his choreography on autopilot, muscle memory carrying him through moves he's performed 1,000 times. But his attention fractures. Then he sees it clearly. The sign emerges from behind a security guard's shoulder, handmade cardboard, with magic marker words that seem to glow under the blazing spotlights. "One dance before I go." The woman holding it isn't screaming or reaching desperately like the others. She's crying, silent tears that catch the light as she looks directly into Michael's eyes with an expression that stops his breath. The fan in the wheelchair sits perfectly still amid the chaos, his thin frame dwarfed by the metal and padding that supports him. His face is gaunt but peaceful, eyes closed as if he's trying to absorb every note, every vibration through his skin. There's something in his stillness that pierces the noise, a dignity that speaks of someone who has already said goodbye to everything except this one moment. Michael misses his mark in the choreography, a stumble so subtle the audience doesn't notice, but his backup dancers exchange glances. This felt wrong. Or maybe this was exactly right. For the first time in months, he approaches the edge of the stage, abandoning his position in the carefully blocked routine, and the security team tenses. This isn't part of the show. The woman with the sign notices his attention and holds it higher, her lips moving in words he can't hear over the music and crowd noise. But he doesn't need to hear them. Her mouth forms syllables he recognizes, with a chill that runs deeper than stage fright. He's dying. The fan opens his eyes then, and the look that passes between them transcends the barrier between performer and audience. It's human recognition, pure and desperate. Michael's hand goes to his earpiece, signaling his sound engineer, but he hesitates. Stopping a show mid-song violates every rule of professional performance. The tour has military precision, every second choreographed and timed for maximum impact. 72,000 people paid to see the King of Pop, not some impromptu moment of vulnerability. But the stranger's eyes hold him captive. They're not the eyes of a fan seeking entertainment. They're the eyes of someone asking for a final gift, a last connection to the beauty in the world before letting go of it forever. The woman beside him, clearly his caregiver, presses the sign against her heart and mouths the words again. Please. The moment stretches like taffy, the music continuing its relentless beat while Michael stands frozen between two versions of himself. The professional, who never breaks character, who understands that the show must go on regardless of personal cost, and the man, who recognizes something sacred happening in front of the enormous audience. His hand moves to the earpiece again, and this time he doesn't hesitate. "Cut the music," he says, his voice barely audible over the thundering bass. "Cut everything." The silence that follows is deafening. The music dies with a suddenness that feels like the world stopping. The massive crowd's voices fade to confused murmurs, then to complete silence as they realize something unprecedented is happening. Michael Jackson stands at the edge of the stage, his famous composure cracking as he stares down at this fragile soul in the wheelchair. The King of Pop, who never deviates from his script, is about to throw away every rule of showmanship. "Bring him up," Michael says into his microphone, his voice carrying across the silent stadium with crystal clarity. Security hesitates. This violates every protocol they've been trained to follow. But an unmistakable authority in Michael's tone brooks no argument. They begin clearing a path, their movements careful and respectful around the wheelchair. Michael doesn't wait. In a move that will be replayed in whispered stories for decades, he steps down from the stage. Not the choreographed descent down the stage stairs that's part of certain songs, but an impromptu climb down the barrier, separating him from his audience. His security detail scrambles to adjust, but he's already kneeling beside the wheelchair before they can properly position themselves. This fragile soul looks even more fragile up close, his skin translucent under the house lights that have come up without cue. His breath is shallow but steady, and when he meets Michael's eyes, his smile is radiant. "I wanted to dance," he whispers, his voice barely audible, even in the profound silence of the stadium. "Just once." Michael takes this fragile soul's hands in his own, feeling how cold they are, how delicate the bones beneath the skin. The sequin glove touches ordinary flesh, and suddenly all the barriers between performer and audience, celebrity and human being, dissolve completely. "Then we'll dance," Michael says, his voice breaking slightly. What happens next defies every expectation. Michael begins to sway gently, still kneeling, moving this fragile soul's hands in time with a rhythm only they can hear. He starts humming "Heal the World," barely audible at first, then stronger as the sound system picks up his voice and carries it through the stadium. The melody drifts over the crowd like a prayer, intimate and universal at once. The sea of humanity, watches in absolute silence as the most famous entertainer on earth shares a slow dance with a dying stranger. There are no cameras capturing this moment for posterity, no official documentation of what may be the most important 3 minutes of the entire tour. Only human witnesses to something that transcends entertainment and becomes pure love. Tears stream down faces throughout the stadium, hard-faced security guards wiping their eyes, cynical music executives forgetting to check their watches. This fragile soul closes his eyes and leans into the moment, his caregiver covering her mouth as she sobs silently. Michael continues to hum, his voice wrapping around them all like a blanket, transforming Wembley Stadium into the most intimate space in the world. When the song fades, Michael kisses this fragile soul's forehead, a gesture so simple and profound that the entire stadium seems to hold its breath. "Thank you," this fragile soul whispers, and Michael knows he's not being thanked for the dance, but for seeing him, truly seeing him, in his final moments of joy. Michael rises slowly, his knees shaking as he climbs back onto the stage. The crowd erupts not in screams, but in applause, a standing ovation that acknowledges they've witnessed something sacred. The show continues, but everyone knows the real performance just ended. They've seen the man behind the legend, and he was more beautiful than any moonwalk could ever be.